Hey there, I'm Matthew Guzman, owner of Remax Universal and the Matthew Guzman Team. I'm excited to be here today. We're bringing some of our team members in so y'all can get to know them, but also to know how much goes in behind the scenes of helping our clients accomplish their goals of their real estate transactions, whether they're buying, selling, investing, or just trying to prepare for what goal that they're trying to accomplish. We're here for our clients, whatever stage of the game they're in, trying to figure out what their real estate goals and needs are. So first, I'm here with Julian Lopez. How you doing today, Julian?
Doing very well. Doing very well. How are you, sir?
Great. Happy to be here with you. Joy Fraley. How are you doing today, Joy?
I'm great.
Okay. Well, so if you've already worked with our team, you hear these names, but sometimes you don't get to meet them because of just the way the transaction rolled out. Or sometimes you'll talk with Joy or you'll talk with Julian and you won't see me, but we all work together behind the scenes to be able to give the best results for you as a consumer. So Joy, you've been with me for the past 10 years. I think you've been telling everybody 8 years, but you've been with me a long time.
Forever.
And prior to joining the team, what was your position in real estate?
I was just a regular realtor agent
Okay.
working on my own.
So you're an individual agent working on your own.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to lunch one day and we had a conversation and I explained to you about what I was in need of, a listing manager, and what that entailed and what helped you make that switch to come over to join the team.
Well, my production wasn't where I wanted it to be. And of course, it was exciting to be able to work with a high producing agent like yourself. So, of course, it was a no brainer that I should take that challenge. And I've never looked back. It's been great.
Sweet. And it has been great ever since Joy joined me as a top producer. I knew that I was missing another piece to the puzzle, right? That client experience was very important for me. And after the transaction, relationships, and when you start to hit certain volume numbers, those things start to struggle because you're trying to help everybody and we kind of have an issue of saying no, right? We say yes to everything and our plate was just filling up. So when I reached out to Joy, I'd asked you if you would be our listing manager. Can you kind of tell them what you do for the team as a listing manager?
Well, Matt generally will do the face-to-face meeting with the client, and then he'll talk about me as his partner on the backside. And so he brings their information back to me, and I get everything coordinated. I do the documents for them, set up photos. I sometimes go and help with staging if that's necessary. I just do whatever it takes. And then from there, I kind of handle the transaction if needed. Sometimes Matt handles the negotiations, sometimes I handle the negotiations. So between us, the deal gets done quickly and we're able to communicate quickly with the other side as well as our clients. They're not, waiting for us to call them back. Someone's always answering the phone. So, and it makes for a great transaction.
So let's just go back to 24. On average, I think last year on a monthly basis, we were averaging over about 80 files a month. So
Yes.
I don't think most people know that. They don't realize, because we give them that full undivided attention that they're that one client. But really behind the scenes, you're handling, and myself on just listing side, anywhere from 60 to 80 buyers or sellers at a time.
Oh, yeah.
And what kind of goes through some of those transactions? What are kind of some of the issues when we have that many listings?
Well, you have family issues with the sellers or title issues, lender issues on the other side with our buyers that are buying our seller's property. We are expediting everything that goes into that, from, making sure all the documents are done and correct, to getting title cleared, to lenders getting us a clear to close, appraisals. Sometimes we're fighting appraisals. Sometimes there are family issues that come up, or we find out there was a death that we didn't know about and we need a probated will, or we have to do heirship affidavits. It's never a dull moment. There's always something exciting that pops up
Yeah.
that we have to figure out. I feel like our job is problem solving. We are figuring out how to get it done.
Yeah, and I think, so sometimes we see the problem and we take it on. We know we got to get it done because if not, we cannot get the file closed. We cannot close the property. But part of the biggest issue in real estate is how many third-party companies are touching one file, right? So if we're working with a lending company that we accepted an offer on a property, how hard is our job when the lenders don't communicate or they didn't actually qualify the file of the buyer the way they should have in the beginning? What does that do for us in the chain of all the other files?
You're focused on that, trying to get one file done when you've got 60 behind it. So you're working hard. You're working long days to make it all happen.
In the industry, and Julian, you could tap on that. How many different third parties do you think we deal with on a daily basis for one transaction?
10, 15?
Easy, right?
Easy.
Because whether it's a survey company, it's a
Appraiser, lender,
appraisers.
title, listing agent or buyer's agent, inspector. And then, I mean, sometimes the client's family or friends will call you. I mean, you just never know. It could be anything. And a lot of times there's multiple different people within those subcategories. You have maybe 2 or 3 different people in the inspections. You don't have just the lender. You have the processor, underwriter, everything like that, which sometimes they're reaching out, and you got to be a little bit flexible with them.
Part of when I designed the team, I just had the Matthew Guzman, and then I knew I needed help, so I added Matthew Guzman Team, and I really see us as a group because we all work very well together. It was a need because the amount of third parties that touch each file, and I think consumers will see it as, hey, I gave you my home to sell and put my home on the market and help me get it sold. But there's so many things we have to coordinate, and sometimes it's not our fault that it didn't happen, because we're, when it is, we'll own up to if there is an issue. We ask for a little bit of grace, but we get it done. I always tell people with communication, we can fix anything, right? If you communicate with me as a seller or a buyer and there's an issue, we can fix it. But the market at the end of the day is going to determine how fast that property moves. Can y'all agree to that?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so we're in a market where we've seen where prices have changed, okay, but the want of where you list the home has not changed, okay? So most people want to start high and they think, well, then we can bring it down if it doesn't sell, right? What have y'all seen? How does that hurt us when the home goes priced too high on the market?
Well, they said, the first 30 days of a listing is the most important. That's when you're going to get your most touches, your most showings. So it's critical. And to have a seller who is not being realistic about pricing, in the end, might cause them to sell lower than we even anticipated because we've lost valuable time on the market.
That's true. That's true. It's also important for when we're working with our clients to make sure that they don't over improve a property. So for example, if you have a community and the most that a home has ever sold for that had pretty good amount of upgrades is $300,000, then you don't want to build a home up to $400,000, $380,000 of value, because when you go to put it on the market, people are going to look at it and look at the comparable sales data for the community. Because when the appraiser's going out, if they can make comparables to anything, they want to try and get it inside the community, if at all possible. And so that can be another big factor too. So don't over improve your house.
And also just, the amount of time investment to get a home on the market, there's a lot of time that goes into that, but also financial investment from our side, right? So the videographers are charging us, the Matterport scan 3D renderings are charging us, the regular photography is charging us. For the property to go and set and then not sell, now we're in a negative, and when you have that many listings, it's an impact. When you have, a high volume of listings, it's an issue. So we will bring our consumer the real numbers, the facts that's happening, but also sometimes we have to look off of that, okay? Sometimes the comps they haven't caught up yet because there hasn't been enough closings or turnover in the neighborhood. How often are we seeing that now, Julian, do you think?
Pretty often the market has changed in areas that, went up like crazy. Some of those areas are still continuing to go up like crazy. Some of them, went up, kind of hit a little bit of a brick wall, and they're trickling back down because of rates and everything in the economy as a whole. But certain areas have continued to go up. like the new listing in Manville we're about to have. I mean, that area has just continued to blow up. It's a hot commodity.
Our team is very unique because we are from all over Houston in different areas, right? So we're able to look at comparables across Houston. We don't just focus on just one platform. Like I can drive all the way to San Marcos and figure out what they're selling for. I know what I'm looking for. Would I take the listing? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on what it is, right? If we're going to refer it out or work the transaction, we know how to go into a market and figure out what those areas are selling for, right? And it's because of the years that we have working across Houston. I think that really gives us the upper hand. On a positive note, though, we're able to figure out where a home should be priced. And if the seller works with us and understanding those things, the property should move pretty fast, okay? But let's talk a little bit about land deals. Land deals and what people are trying to get for those properties, right? So, Joy, we also deal with good tracts of land, whether it's 64 acres, whether it's 125 acres. Usually the sellers on those, they want premium dollar, but they always tell us they're not in a hurry, right? They just want to get the most they can get for the property. What kind of patience should that consumer have and understanding when they say they're not in a hurry?
They need to think years. I mean, 1 year, 2 years, depending on if we're selling 800 acres or if we're selling, 5 acres or 30 acres or 100 acres. It really varies, and the location, of course, of the land is key. And if it's, we're going to do commercial, or are we looking for a ranch style buyer? You've got to look at all accounts, but it's not something you're going to have communication on a weekly basis even. It's going to be here and there when we get those calls on that property.
Yeah, because we're not going to get calls every day on that type of property. It's going to be a unique type buyer. It may be a developer. It may be somebody that wants to have a hunting ranch. So it's going to be unique to what you're trying to accomplish for you to gain your top value, right? And we have the tools and the experience to be able to pull those off, but you really need to ask yourself, what kind of time frame do I really want to see this move? Because we've had some that say they're not in a hurry, and then all of a sudden it's a panic, right? So before you think about putting any property on the market, and then you're going to interview a real estate professional, really understand your timeline, like what you are trying to accomplish. Just because you want to accomplish that higher number doesn't mean the comps are going to support it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. So going on the market, at a 30% higher listing price than what's actually happening doesn't mean it's going to sell just because you let it set a year longer, right? So you really got to look at, what is your timeline? What's your goal as a seller to be able to accomplish your end result? What are you looking for? Please bring those things when you're interviewing a listing agent, because it allows us to help accomplish your goals. This isn't about us. This is about helping you as a consumer accomplish what you're looking for, right? So, Joy, another unique thing about our setup is I look at the file first, right, and then you look at it second. Where do we get to go back and forth on?
We're always going back and forth on that price.
So when you're hiring the Matthew Guzman team, the cool thing is there's not one set of eyes looking at the price first, right? So I'm looking at it, and usually I already have a number in mind before I even go study the comps, because I want to touch the home, I want to look at it, I want to see the passion and what upgrades you've done to it, but I also want to see location. There's a lot of things I'm looking for. Then I'll go study the comparables and say, okay, well, this is what it's showing me, and then I'll come up with a number that I think I'm strong about, right? And then I send it over to Joy, and then Joy gets to do the same thing, and usually that's where we're back and forth. So you don't have just one person looking at the pricing, okay? And that's important for you to know, because that tells you that we've looked at it, we've studied it. Julian yesterday was texting me he has some listings right now, and he was texting me some addresses, asking me for my comps. I gave him my numbers, and he already had different numbers, right? So we were able to look at those, and then when we give our reasoning for our numbers, it brings the value of, okay, no, yeah, this is why I pulled these numbers or comparables into the equation for us to look at, right? So, but that has been a successful strategy for us. What happens though really is, if we're giving you the comparables, look at those if you're and really take into consideration why we're trying to give that information to you. But what we find is a lot of sellers are looking at what things were selling for in the past, and it's not that it dropped a lot. it could have only dropped 20,000 or 10,000, or it could be that you're having to offer money to a buyer for closing cost, okay, so they can help buy their interest rate down. So those kind of things you need to be open to talking about whenever you're doing your listing appointment, especially if you need to be sold by a certain time frame. The more tools you have in your back pocket is going to help you be more successful of getting top dollar and selling your home faster. You know, we all have the same end result of wanting to get the property sold for you. We're not trying to put a sign out there so you can see it through all the holidays, and but that's what happens. We have to go out and replace the sign because it's been there so long. We're not trying to. We want to be the first and the last agent on the transaction. We want to make sure that we're helping you and answering your questions, but we want to be able to be honest with you, because that's what you're inviting us into your home for us to be able to be honest with you and give you the factual information of what's actually happening, right? Joy also manages our compliance side, making sure that we're compliant. How important is that?
It's critical because that's how you get sued. I mean, if we miss something, not just getting sued, but also for our sellers and buyers to make sure they're not getting taken advantage of. The way those contracts are written, we have to perform to that. So it's critical that we perform to those contracts and what's written in them is correct and what our sellers and buyers have asked for. So it's critical, very detailed.
I always say there's so many boxes that need to be checked on these contracts. When people say, I'm just going to sell it myself, for sale by owner, I'm like, okay, well, it's going to cost you more if you do not know what you're checking, right? Or you're leaving yourself open to potential return of lawsuit down the road. How did you disclose the property? What did you actually tell the seller? What did y'all agree on? What was your conversation? There's so many things that happens when you take the real estate professionals out of the equation that I don't think people talk about. I mean, it's just like myself. When I list my properties, I don't represent myself. I either give it to somebody on the team, they list it, and they handle it. You're not going to see me talking with the agents. You're not going to see me talking to the buyer. I hire representation to help me as well in the transaction. So, if you're a consumer watching this, reach out to us. Even if you don't sign with us, at least get the information. Get the information that you need. We're there to help you. There's no obligation for us to come in and sit down and talk with you. So compliance is a big thing for us. We have a lot of expectations within the brokerage. So Julian, I'm going to switch over to you for a little bit. You do buyers and listings for us, right? So you go on listing appointments and you also help with buyers. How long have you been with us now?
When I first started, I came on into the REMAX Universal as an individual agent. I was here, I want to say about 6 months, 6 months, and then I decided to try out my personal experience. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say. It was almost like I was at the gym in high school at one of the pep rallies, and then it was kind of like you're off on your own for the whole rest of your life. Is just, hey, get up and go, and then you're solo dolo. So I like the more familial aspect of not only the office of REMAX Universal, but the team, the production, and then the leads. I was 20 years old when I got into the business. I'm 28 now. But when I first got started, none of my friends needed or wanted to buy a house, maybe a rental, but I really needed to know where were my leads coming from, because if you don't have leads in real estate, you're starving. So that was, a big indication of why I came. I knew you guys knew what the heck you were doing. I knew I could look at you guys both as, mentors if anything ever came up. Y'all do answer the phone, which is important to me, and back in support systems. And with realtors, you get a lot of phone calls, people trying to take your money. So it's cool because I could call Matt and say, hey, is this a good, company to let them take my money, or is it a waste of time? And he'd be able to very blatantly say, hey, that's a waste of time, don't spin your wheels. But yeah, it's been about 8 years total combined on the Matt Guzman team.
It's been a while, right?
Yeah.
So we've seen Julian grow, and you're doing amazing. And I wanted to acknowledge that today. So I've seen Julian grow and what he's doing in his production. At what point in time did you start to see your business to turn, where you're getting your repeat clients now? It's coming kind of steady stream of what you're doing now.
After about the 3 or 4 year mark, to be honest, because you really have to, the first few years, you're just learning a lot. You have to go through a lot of painful experiences, a lot of heartbreak, and you have to learn a whole lot. You really just have to get out into the field and start experiencing these things, because you just can't learn it behind a computer or in front of a book. You really have to go through the experience, learn how to look at people, learn how to talk to people, learn how to read people. If they're uncomfortable and they're kind of like sitting back in their chair like this, if you're saying something, you need to be able to understand that and say, okay, let me take a step back and kind of figure out what, hey, where's that monster in the conversation, so I can step on that monster and make sure that there's no, concerns that the people I work with have on the buying side and the selling side. I mean, fortunately, a lot of sellers are very well informed and educated, and they have, they understand what's going on. But a lot of buyers, they're very scared, very nervous. There's a lot of mountains to climb during the process to make them understand and feel comfortable. And my biggest thing is making sure that people are more than comfortable, that they have all the information they need to be able to move forward, whether it's their first home, their fifth home, whatever it might be. Safety is number one to me, making sure that people are not overspending, that their monthly payment they're going to be comfortable with, even in a worst case situation where they lose their job, they break their foot, get in a car accident. These things happen all the time. So it's super important for me. I've never had a client lose their home because they couldn't afford it. And I feel like that's just super important.
So I guess we could have titled this "The Battle of the Listing Agents and the Buyer's Agents," because here, this is what we want you to see as a consumer. So you as a buyer, let's just focus on the buyer side
Sure.
for a second, right? To protect the buyer on not overpaying, what are you going to do?
I'm going to run numbers up front, and I'm going to show them when we go and grab a coffee, or if we go and, sit down at the office, I'm going to show them right then and there, hey, you say you want to buy a $400,000 house? Well, a $400,000 house 3 years ago costed this much. Now a $400,000 house costs this much. So people need to understand that, because they're thinking, oh, $400,000 house, it'll be $2,000 a month. No, that's not the case anymore. It was. But now, and then it also depends on your tax rate. It depends on your HOA. Some of these communities have a 3.4% tax rate before homestead. Some of them have an $1,800 homeowners association. Flood zones. I'm looking at everything, but the most important aspect, in my opinion, number one, safety, and almost on the same level, but money. People need to know exactly where they're going to have to be, because they might not be ready. Not to talk too much trash on builders or their lenders, but sometimes there's bad people in the industry, and you need to make sure that you have a real estate soldier on the battlefield fighting for you, because unfortunately some people will lie and they will mislead you. People are given numbers based on unimproved property tax value, which will make your property taxes $1,500, $2,000 a year. And then once you get your appraised value with a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house on it, then all of a sudden your property taxes went, from there to, right about here. I literally just a week ago talked to a 29-year-old girl. She's paying $4,800 a month for her house. She bought a $450,000 house in Audubon in Magnolia. Her payment went up $1,000. What would happen to you guys if your house payment that you have to make went up $1,000 more than what you were quoted and anticipating for the next 30 years?
So when you're out showing a home and they say, that's the home I want to put an offer on, and you go run comps, what should that listing agent know that you're doing?
Whatever's similar, I want to be, depending on the option, the upgrades and everything that it has, but I want to be below, especially in a market like this, I want to be below what the lowest anybody has paid for that floor plan or for that size home. For the closest comparable, I want to be under that, especially in this market. It doesn't make sense to overspend in this economy. So I'm looking at has that home been repiped? Have they worked on the electricity? Of course, we're going to get an inspection as well. Inspection is going to cover all these things. The last two transactions I did, I had the seller pay for one hydrostatic test, and then another seller paid for a sewer scope, which is like a plumbing inspection. And one of these sellers is paying $3,800 for one of the sewer lines that needed help, and the other one's paying over $8,000. And this was something I originally wrote in the contract, because they're older homes. They have, older piping. One of them is galvanized, and they're at the end of their life. So the seller went in, the seller paid for an inspection. It's one of the first times I've ever seen that happen. But a lot of value in that, seller to do the inspection and then repair anything that's wrong.
So for y'all to hear, there's a lot of things that go in on the buyer side. You just heard a whole bunch of different things from Julian about whether it's the inspection, whether it's the closing costs, whether it's the comparables. That is what buyer's agents go out there and do with the buyer side of the transaction, because they're there to protect the buyer and try to help them figure out all the obstacles before they purchase that home. And the buyer has all these questions. They want to know about this home. They're fixing to write a check over to you for whether it's $400,000 or $500,000. They're taking this property and they're taking the responsibility and the ownership for it, right? And they're going to have all those questions. Julian is not the only buyer's agent in Houston. There's thousands of them, right? And we get those offers in, and sometimes we see the offers come in. We're like, man, they didn't ask for any. Like, they didn't even, contract's not filled out right. We'll fix the contract. Now we're doing the buyer's agent's job. We're correcting the contract. So yes, we understand it may be your best friend that just got her license and you want to help her or him, start in the industry, but make sure they have the right brokerage support. Find out how you can ask other questions, because those contracts and the questions are very important to make sure that you're not going to have issues down the road. Everybody got started in the industry, so everybody deserves the opportunity to get started, but their back-end support's also important, right?
Yes.
So because we have new agents started, Julian started new and he built it up from there, The other win that I like is, as a new agent joining us, or somebody's looking at joining a team, we have a large footprint. We don't just focus in one area, So that has allowed you to do what for your business?
Go anywhere and be able to sell, whether it's Baytown, Fulshire, Freeport, Galveston, Katy, anywhere.
So we're gonna say for you to lease a vehicle is not a good idea, right?
No, not gonna happen. No, just went over 200,000 miles, baby.
So the model, because you don't know where a buyer needs to move to, right? So you really got to know different parts of Houston or surrounding areas. But the fundamentals of being in real estate don't change, right? Like what you need and the tools we need to help that client be successful in what they're trying to accomplish, those things don't change, And numbers are there. You can't hide what somebody's selling for. So the biggest thing for you to know that you're protected, because the bank is going to send out an appraiser to appraise the home before you close on it, to make sure that you're not overpaying for the value of the property. So not only did you already do your part before we list the home, but also before you purchase the home, put an offer to purchase the home, but also the bank is going to come back out and also do that for you. Now, if you're paying cash, you can actually hire an appraisal firm to come out and appraise the property before you close on that home with your cash. And we highly recommend that. So if you're going to be a buyer paying cash, spend the extra money to go ahead and pay for an appraisal and get the property appraised before you pay cash for it. And make sure you have that in the contract, that you're going to have an appraisal done on the property. So those are things that are going to protect you, to make sure that you're making the right investment for what you're purchasing. Because we've seen where people come in, they pay cash, and then they need to sell and they overpaid for the property. Usually we do not get the listing because they think that we're off on the numbers. We see them list the home and it just sits there because they paid way too much for the home. All that can be prevented if you get an appraisal. And at least gives you a guide. It gives you somewhere to start if you're not using traditional financing. Okay, so I really wanted y'all to meet some of the back end, some of the different things that we do, but also put a face to the name. If you've worked with Joy in the past, you've worked with Julian, or you worked with myself, maybe you didn't get to meet us at the closing table or during the transaction, but just by phone. We're passionate about what we do. We love what we do, but there's more of us. Over the next few weeks and months, you're going to get to meet more of our team members and know what we offer and how dedicated we are to our community and the services we offer. But we can help you with so many different things. If you're currently in a lease and you want to figure out how soon you can be prepared for purchasing, reach out to us. Don't wait until 30 days of your lease expiring. Call us now. If you just signed a lease and it's over in a year, call us right now so that Julian or some of our other buyer agents can start helping you with the process to be able to not have to re-sign another lease. Or if you're looking at selling your home, and I always hear people say, oh, we're going to sell in the fall, but they didn't do any preparation before that, and they wait to do it right before, and then they start finding out all the things that they need to do to the home. Reach out to us prior to that. We'll come out, we'll make a list with you, and help you be able to have the time that you need to prepare the home. But also estate, if you have an estate where maybe it's a loved one that you need to get the home ready, we work well with estate planning. We have estate attorneys that can help do the probates and tell us the process of what we need to help you have an easier, smoother transaction. If there's multiple family members, we know how to transition through all those things and to be able to get the property sold for you in a timely manner. But thank y'all for tuning in, and if you have any questions, messages, reach out to us. We're here to help. Thank you.